Hello and
Hello.
welcome to Sound Off with System One. I'm your host, Krista Kornchuk, and I'm here today with our panel of experts to discuss your biggest interview and resume questions. That means if you're tuning in live, you can send us your most pressing job search related questions and we'll answer as many as possible. Before we get started, here are a few words about System One. System One is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life science, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and what industry you work in. And as I said before, we encourage you to send us your most pressing job search related questions, as this is a live Q&A. And before we get started with those questions, I'm going to have our expert panel introduce themselves. They're also going to be sharing a hot job, which you can view by scanning the QR code or by visiting jobs.system1.com. Maggie, we'll start with you.
Hello, good afternoon. Maggie Marroquin, Director of Recruitment Services in System One in Houston.
Hi, I'm Jayne Hillman. I work as a recruiter with System One in Pittsburgh.
Well, good afternoon and happy spring, everybody. Shawn, Senior Recruiter with Mountain Limited. We are a System One division. Mountain Limited is a pioneering telecommunication engineering firm which bridges communication gaps and strengthens our nation's critical infrastructure.
Perfect. And like I said, we're going to have our panel share their hot jobs as well as their job search tips. So Maggie, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Today I want to talk about a financial reporting senior accountant role that I'm working on for one of our clients, North Houston. This is a long-term project role, 24 plus months. The client's going through a system implementation and looking for somebody with a strong background in reporting and analysis for pension or post-retirement benefit plans. So slated to last 24 plus months. It is a hybrid role. I know that is still a hot button for a lot of folks. So would love to take a look at your resume and get a conversation going.
That sounds like a great job, Maggie. My job is a performance marketing analyst. It is for one of our retail clients in New York. A big aspect here, we are looking for 5+ years of experience, but anybody that has a little bit of experience, I'd love to chat, see if we have any other roles for you. Also, a bachelor's degree is required for this role. We are working, again, in the retail sector. That's a big plus, but not a requirement. We can see what we can do with this position. So feel free to apply, and we'll be chatting soon.
Oh, those are both great, but of course, I think my job is the best. We're looking for a project manager. Of course, this position is located in Phoenix, Arizona, looking for candidates only locally at this time. This is a hybrid role. Of course, you must have telecom experience, have fiber builds, GIS platforms, and of course, project management. This is an internal direct hire with our company. We're looking to add to our family, and pay will be based on experience.
Awesome. And we want your questions to be rolling in while we're waiting for your questions for this live Q&A. We're going to have our panel share their job search tips. So Maggie, we'll start with you.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, I've been getting this question a lot from my candidates, is there seems to be an extended delay in response time after the candidate interviews. And so what is, just some of the advice I always encourage candidates is not only to send kind of that follow-up email and reiterate, express the interest in the opportunity, stay connected to reinforce your interest, connect with the hiring managers on LinkedIn as well. And also I like to know where I stand at all times. And so as I'm wrapping up the interview, I always try to leave with next steps, right? That whole thing in our industry, we talk about always be closing, right? So talk about what those next steps are, ask the hiring manager, how soon are you looking to fill this position? What are the best next steps? When can I expect to hear something back? So ideally you have some kind of time frame walking out on what that looks like. And then, we don't want to be stalkers, but following up every 2 weeks, hopefully it doesn't take more than a month to hear back. But I know some of these bigger corporations, it does take a little bit of time to get through all the approvals and the red tape. So, stay consistent with your communication, but let's try not to be a stalker. Every 2 weeks, kind of checking in is more than sufficient.
Those are great tips, Maggie. Mine will also piggyback off of that. And if anybody ever hears me on these Q&As, I tell you to connect with a recruiter. It's not just to boost our numbers on LinkedIn. It's really to have a conversation. So on that end, after an interview, during the entire process, but especially after you meet with the hiring managers, stay connected with the recruiter. Follow up with them. See if they have any roles similar to that. Just stay engaged across the board. I really appreciate Maggie's emphasis on do not stalk the hiring managers. Follow up with the recruiter if you have to. A lot of times, the hiring managers have more than just one interview to handle. Follow up with the recruiter, see what's going on. The recruiters have direct access to the managers. So that is a big thing. Patience and follow up and connect. I'll talk to anybody, even if I don't have that job. You might not want to hear what I have to say, but then I'll connect you with the right recruiter and we'll go from there.
That's both great. One of the things I guess I've been getting hit up really a lot lately has been resumes. And a lot of people think one resume fits all jobs. And I talk and connecting, of course, with the recruiter and the candidates. It's most important to make sure you tailor your resume to the specific job you're actually applying for, because it isn't a cookie cutter template. Every client, every hiring manager, they're looking for specific keywords, looking for your experience. You want to make sure you're tailoring that resume with, achievements and accomplishments during your time period, but definitely tailoring it towards the specific job. Try not to sell yourself as a car salesman if you've never sold cars and you're working in the hospital industry. You've got to tailor that resume specifically for the job, which is going to help you, the recruiter, and the hiring manager to get hired on the role.
I like it. Thank you all for sharing. And I want to piggyback off of what Shawn just said. We have a lot of great resources on System One's website and System One's newsletter. If you need help tailoring your resume to a job, please check out our newsletter. We have some questions rolling in. So I'm going to start with the first one I saw from Allison. Does it reflect negatively to put open to work badge on your LinkedIn profile? Great question.
I'll go first. That is definitely not going to hurt your profile at all. I think that enables you to be seen by potential recruiters. My biggest thing is when your open work badge is on, definitely engage, because I found people where I'm communicating back and forth on LinkedIn and they say, well, I'm just, trying to see what's out there. I'm feeling what's out there in the market. If you're seriously looking for work, I would encourage you to do the open for work badge, because it's going to help you get identified from recruiters within System One to make sure you find that amazing job or that next step in your career.
I think that's a great idea, Shawn. And following with that, with the open to work badge, I've seen that you can put a lot of information on it. And even on the bottom, it'll say status or something along those lines. And it'll say immediately looking or casual. I can't think of the right words right now. But that's really huge, and if something changes on your end, update that, or you'll be continued, we'll still reach out to you. And then I get a lot of, well, I'm actually not looking. So the open to work badge is a great tool. From our experience, it will not negatively impact you. Just make sure it matches your job search, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. My team in Houston, we focus direct hire as well as contract and contract to hire positions. And those contract roles move fast. And so I get ecstatic when I see the green banner open to work on somebody that, I'm trying to get in touch with. So I don't think it's a negative thing at all.
Fantastic. We're having a lot of good comments come in. A couple people are asking what the appropriate amount of pages are for a resume.
I'll jump in. So resumes, when it comes to resumes and opinions, it's all subjective, right? I know in the IT space, some candidates have an 8-page resume, and that's got to be exhausting. But when you list all the software and the projects and everything that you've done, that's somewhat acceptable in that industry. Traditionally, I encourage candidates, depending on years of experience, right? Like if you have a CFO with 25 years of experience, it's going to be very hard to condense that to a 2-page resume. So I do think it's okay to go into 3 pages. That's my max personally. But it's more about what's on those 3 pages. And so for me, like that first page, that needs to be the majority of the story, right? And so you have your summary of qualifications, your highlights, your major accomplishments, your education, what you've done, what you want to do. all of that pertinent information. And then like the professional experience moves into that second and third page. And for me personally, I would rather see your major accomplishments listed under each role because, those ROIs, that's what's selling you at the end of the day. That's what's going to get you your next role. And somebody that's done that throughout their career, they're just going to continue to do that. That's naturally who they are. And I think employers would rather see that than see the mundane kind of day-to-day responsibilities, which if you have both, it can extend your resume out.
Yeah, definitely. The only thing I would add to that is if you partner up with a recruiter, that recruiter will be able to help identify how much information should be on that resume. You don't want to oversell yourself. You don't want to undersell yourself, but partnering up with a recruiter will allow you to kind of tailor your resume that's going to be specific for that job. I mean, Robert, this is a great question. I've heard people say for every 10 years, you should have one page of a resume. But it all depends on, what the position is and what your skill set is. And depending on the industry, will tailor how long your resume should be.
I think just one thing to add, you can have a personal resume as long as you want, I think. And then that way you have every bit of information that you've had on each job. Of course, it would be pertinent to the job that you're applying for, but I think it would be great just to have a list of everything you've done in the past if you want to write that out. But I like the 3-page resume. I agree with Maggie and Shawn. Great points.
I like what you just added about having a personal resume with everything on it. That's a really good tip, Jayne. Another great question came in from Sharon. She wants to know how you would handle a long period without working.
I'll jump in there. If there's an extended leave of absence from the workforce, everybody's going to have the same question. So put it out there on paper, right? Sometimes less is more, but put that in your summary section. If it's, degreed senior accountants took a break to raise a family, looking to get back out, just something, because that's going to get the conversation going. And, recruiters with third party and with employers, they're looking at that resume and the first thing they see was your last job was 5 years ago. If there's not some kind of something there, they may just keep going. Whereas if you just address the elephant in the room and say, this is why I've been out, this is what I'm doing, I'm ready to get back out there, let's go. That might increase the interest and the traction.
Absolutely. You don't want to leave anything up to an interpretation.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you both covered it. I mean, you just want to identify that, you had a break and you did A, B, and C.
Perfect. And we have a longer question about transitioning into a new industry. So someone that has a lot of relevant technical skills, but not industry experience, wants to navigate seeking a mid-level role with 10 years of experience, but she feels like she looks overqualified. The rest of the question cut out, but essentially she is trying to enter a new industry in more junior level roles. What advice would you have for her?
I'll start. That's a great question. It's a tough one. If you partner up with a recruiter with System One, I think they can help you tailor how you're going to try to get in that interview. A lot of people recently, depending on the industry you're in, there has been a big trend from the past, and you definitely trying to get your foot in the door could be a struggle, but highlighting some of the new skill sets you might have picked up in that new industry is going to set you up for success. I would definitely partner up with companies in that industry, communicate with others that are working in that industry. I think networking is probably the biggest plus in this, is if you can network with folks in that specific career field, it's going to help you with your transition easier.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Industry can be tough. Industry can be tough sometimes. Just being in Houston, a lot of folks want people that have specific industry experience. And so making that transition can sometimes be difficult. So like Shawn said, a lot of it's going to be networking, articulating those transferable skills in lieu of the industry experience.
Fantastic. Yeah, networking is everything. We have another question coming in. Should you leave positions older than 15 to 20 years off your resume? Great question.
I would say yes, for the most part. I mean, what you've been doing the last 7 to 12 years, is really what your next opportunity is going to look like. If it makes sense and we're trying to go back to a particular industry that you worked in 20 years ago and you're going to take that off, then maybe put something in your summary section that says, doing X, Y, and Z in various industries, including yada, yada, yada. And then, that will prompt the potential employer to say, I see here it says you've worked in financial services, but I don't see it on your resume. Then that will give you an opportunity to say, well, 20 years ago when I got out of college, I was doing, I was a financial services rep or what have you. But I would say yes.
I personally would keep all your information in your resume depending on the industry you're in. For example, in the telecom industry, or if you're in the bioscience, in different fields, they're going to want to see everything you've done from A through Z in your career. A lot of times, people get focused that if I don't have a degree or my education's not covered, will my experience help me to get the position? A lot of the clients I'm working with want to see how much telecom experience that you have, which is going to help you get the position. So it's kind of a catch 2020. I know Jayne has said it. I've said it a bunch of times. I think everybody talks about it. Connect with a recruiter so that way you can kind of tailor that resume, because specific industries are going to want to know the very first day you stepped in the industry, and some might not. It really all depends on the job in the industry.
No, I think that's a really good point, Shawn. One question that I get asked a lot too is, hey, I've been a non-degreed senior accountant for 20 years, but I don't have the education. What do I do with that? And I always tell candidates, if you're qualified and interested in the role, apply all day. As a recruiter, clients reach out to us to place experienced people. I am not the best resource for a new grad, right? At the end, I'm selling your education and hopefully your award-winning personality, right? But I'm not selling a skill set. And I have more luck placing candidates that have hands-on experience versus folks that don't. So just because, you don't have the degree, that's an employer's hang up. Don't let it be yours.
I agree.
Awesome. And I'm getting a couple questions about cover letters right now. How important are cover letters when applying to a job?
I think it goes back to what we were kind of saying. Don't leave anything up to interpretation. So if there's something that you need to explain on your resume, either add that quick line on your resume or add that to a cover letter. On my end, and especially with the varying rules that I have, I don't need to see a cover letter for everything. If through my communication with the hiring managers, they would like to see an extra added layer of effort, then we'll communicate that. On my end, I don't see it as being pertinent to every single job that you apply to.
Agree.
Yeah, I think if you're applying through a website, a cover letter might be something worthwhile. If you're working or partnered up with a recruiter, the cover letter might not be the biggest thing. I think if you have a summary statement on the top of your resume that kind of hits and highlights, your experiences, that's going to be great. But it really all depends on who you're working with in the industry.
Fantastic. These are good questions. And I'm sorry, Maggie, did you have something to add?
No, I'm just smiling real big.
All right. We have a question about reaching out to recruiters, which if you haven't connected to our recruiters, make sure you do. How often do recruiters read the cold emails? Is it an effective approach for job search?
So I'll jump in here because I know I get a good bit of cold emails, and I'll end up forwarding them if they're not for me. Say it's for like one of our subsidiary companies like Mountain. I will go ahead and forward it, and I'll respond and I'll say, hey, listen, unfortunately, I don't work with that position. I think given that a lot of our like IT emails are great, but I think LinkedIn and having that connection, maybe messaging on there could be a better use. I mean, I'll get cold phone calls, I'll answer, and I'll give them the same response. Sometimes LinkedIn will take us right to your resume, right to your profile. So it'll probably depend on the recruiter and their process. Not the best answer. It's kind of like in the middle.
Mine's in line with yours as well. I try to, my inbox stays full, but I try to stay on top of that. I am more active on LinkedIn because I feel like oftentimes it's I am, right? And that's how we kind of operate. And so you might get a faster response that way.
Yeah, it's no different in my eyes than a recruiter cold calling you or sending you a cold email for a job opportunity. I think networking, I think, sharing information. LinkedIn is definitely a highlight. You want to definitely stay in touch, message. I probably get, 100 messages on LinkedIn daily. And even if I'm not recruiting a job, if I know who's the recruiter or if it's a different industry, we all kind of share the wealth. Because at the end of the day, I think we have our own special niche, and it's about taking care of people as much as we can. Now, we can't solve everybody's problems. We can't get everybody a job, of course. But I think collectively within System One, we partner up really well by taking care of as many candidates as possible for openings.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Maxine is wondering how to handle job applications who insist previous manager's contact information must be added to the application. So that's a good question.
That is a good question, and that's interesting. I haven't seen where, I mean, other than like the list of references, but on our side with a recruiter, we do very much want to speak to people that have managed you in some type of capacity, and so we encourage candidates to list those references even on our own application. And I always encourage candidates to, maintain a relationship with folks that you've worked with and for in the past, and let them know, hey, is it okay if I list you as a reference? I'm looking for a new opportunity. Just give them a heads up. Don't do it blindly. I have some candidates, or I've seen where candidates will sometimes list that reference information as a second attachment to their resume. I discourage that all day. Make somebody have a conversation with you to get those details. Or when candidates are kind of in the interviewing process, you're leaving the interview, you can kind of have a separate sheet listing your references out, and leave that as, hey, really interested in this opportunity. Appreciate your time today. I wanted to leave you my list of references. Feel free to reach out to them if you have any additional questions or concerns. But first and foremost, make sure these people know that you're listing them as references so they're not blindsided when they do get a phone call.
I've personally been doing this for over 10 years. I guess I haven't seen a application that says you should have your previous managers. Me personally, Shawn Thibodeau speaking, I wouldn't. At the end of the day, you don't want to give any additional information that could impact you. Ideally, if you're the right person for the position for them to interview you, and if the interview goes well, at that point, I definitely would be more than happy to share the previous manager's name or contact information. But you want to be able to give those people a heads up. And at the end of the day, sometimes you don't know if you're going to get this job. So actually providing that manager might surprise the current company you're working with or somebody they might know, because I've heard that before. So just be cautious on that.
Fantastic. And we have a question. If a resume is out in the market for 6 months, does the chances of getting job calls decrease? Good question.
I think that's a good question, and I think that's a high likelihood. And so, when you're on the market and you're looking for a new opportunity, you want to stay on top of your search, stay fresh. Maybe this is cheating a little bit, but I have fully embraced Chat GPT in my entire life. And so, it could be a resume refresh. If you feel like it's stagnant, plug your resume in there and see if it, puts some fancier words or just brushes it up, polishes it up. That might give it a new look or a new kind of feel. But if you're unemployed and you've been on the market for 6 months, that's one thing. If you're passively looking and you're on the market for 6 months, that's not, depending on your skill set, to me, that's not necessarily a long time. So, power of networking is everything. Partner with a local recruiter where you are. One of the things that, I've been doing this for 13 years. Prior to that, I was in accounting, and I had my favorite recruiter that I used, and he was amazing. But one of the things that I loved was, I would see a job posted at X company, and I would text, my guy and say, hey, do you know anything about this company? And he'd be, we had a great relationship, and he'd be like, girl, keep walking, stay away from them. Because we talk to candidates all day long that are on the move and leaving for various reasons. And some of that is, culture or commute or management style or whatever. And so it is so crucial to have an amazing relationship with your recruiter that's going to be transparent and open with you, to help you land in your next long-term opportunity if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing to add on this question, I think it's really important to stay active on the job boards that you're on. So if you're on LinkedIn, engage on posts, engage if somebody comment or post or publish or share things, then we'll see that you're active. If it turns out 6 months, I don't think it's a very long time. But say you have a longer job gap and there's not a lot of activity on your LinkedIn, it's not going to be as, I guess, easy to feel like we're going to get a callback or a response. We'll more than likely still reach out. The likelihood, though, we probably would think that you're not going to respond. But 6 months, I don't think that's too long. But stay active on Indeed, depending on your skill sets. Keep Indeed active, keep LinkedIn active, and then update your resume. Just make sure that it's fully up to date.
I would say 6 months without doing anything is kind of like having milk in the fridge for 6 months. It's going to spoil. You want to network, you want to connect with folks, you want to stay engaged. Especially with LinkedIn, you're allowed to add comments. You can follow companies. I think that if you're waiting for the job to come to you, it might never come. So I definitely would encourage you all to beat down the doors, communicate, connect with a recruiter. Sometimes we get overwhelmed as a recruiter. We might not respond back as soon as possible, but you definitely want to stay kind of like poking the bear. You want to stay in touch so that way nobody forgets you. Because today we fill a job. Tomorrow, we might have another job that's right next to that location, but things do slip through the cracks. So definitely stay communicating with the recruiters or the companies that you're wanting to really work with.
And we've discussed communicating with recruiters quite a bit, but we haven't discussed reaching out directly to hiring managers and DMing them on LinkedIn. Any thoughts on that?
So for me, if you've partnered with a recruiter and you're lined up with this interview and this opportunity through that recruiter, respect the process and go through the recruiter. If you've applied to something on your own and met with a hiring manager, I think that's completely acceptable to send them a note, on LinkedIn. Hey, just wanted a pleasure meeting you. Just wanted to kind of follow up with you, regarding next steps or interest level. But if there's a third party involved, kind of let them do that part.
Yeah, definitely. I think, DM could be kind of a little touchy. But on the flip side, a little thank you note. I always encourage people after interviewing to make sure they put a thank you note. It really all depends, too, on the kind of level of the position you're interviewing for. But, following up, saying thank you in an email. A lot of times interviews are being done through Teams. Everybody knows that who you're interviewing, their email address is going to be on there. So there's nothing wrong with sending a little personal note for the people that took the time to kind of learn your life, your history, and it just allows you to keep that positive vibe going.
Perfect. And our last question, does it hurt to be presented several times for a position by different recruiters? It's a great question.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So on my end with my positions, I will ask, especially when I know that there could be other people searching for this job, I will ask because on my end, I don't want to present you if you've already been presented. I think it'll bog down the hiring manager. I think if they're working on a response, they have to review resumes as they come in. On my end, I would be very honest with who I've talked to, which positions I've applied to when I talk to a recruiter. And that way I would have a better idea of, has the hiring manager already seen this person? If so, I would not submit multiple times.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. For me, through that same vein, I am very transparent, maybe kind of to a fault. And so if I come across a candidate, for a particular opportunity and I'm like, oh, this is with the ABC. And they're like, actually, I was already presented through, XYZ staffing firm. I know I'm on the right path, right? And so I'm like, woohoo, I'm on the right path. Let's kind of keep going. And they say, well, I interviewed 2 weeks ago and I never got any feedback. And so sometimes, depending on my relationship with the client, I will just not share a resume, but I'll share a name. and just say, hey, hopefully I have more, additional candidates to submit at the same time too while I'm getting feedback. But I'll say, hey, I see, I was chatting with Bob Smith. He looks great for this opportunity. Connected with him, and it sounds like he was already presented. And often, is that correct? And then the client will come back and say, yes, he was submitted, but just not the right fit for what we're looking for. Wish he had more X, right? And that way, the potential feedback comes directly from them, and then I'll turn around and give that to the candidate. Like, hey, I did reach out to him. They said it was a pleasure meeting with you. They were looking for somebody with more experience at SAP or something along those lines. Just trying to give the candidate some kind of closure, and kind of wrap up the search. But yes, I do. I am not a fan of presenting the same candidate to multiple opportunities for sure. Sometimes on our side too, we do confidential searches. And so we can't share the name of the company until the client says, yes, I'm interested in meeting this person. So we do get some overlap there unknowingly and until we get to that interview phase. But as a rule, no, be transparent with your recruiter. If somebody calls you and says, hey, I'm working on this role and you've already been presented, tell them.
Well said. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone that commented. We had a lot of fantastic questions today. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to follow System One on LinkedIn if you're not already, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can see past Q&As, past Sound Off with System One episodes with a bunch of job seeker topics on there. And our next System One live stream will be Friday, April 4th at 2 p.m. And we're going to be discussing how to get a job post-grad. We'll see you then.